Hello, everyone. This is Scott Hobgood with Beyond Normal Boundaries. Today, Tom Ray is with us. He is a returning guest, and we're going to be holding a very difficult conversation today on a difficult subject, and that is evil. This word and actions it is associated with is controversial, and Tom and I will attempt to show it is an interpretation of an individual's experience which should be considered before judging the action one makes. Tom, thank you for being here again today and willing to take on such a difficult subject.
Thank you, Scott. I'm happy to be here.
Um, how how can I make a statement that there is no evil in the world? Can you share me your insight on that?
Well, that statement itself, it depends on what context we're trying to use it in. Because if you don't declare anything evil, it means that you don't, it could be seen as you're indifferent or someone is indifferent. Let's not use you as the example. But if a person were to say, nothing is evil in the world, it's hard to define who that person is because in that aspect of self, there's nothing. And it is my understanding that we're here to define who we are through the life that we lead, whether that focuses on our views about evil, our views about politics, our views about the way life should function. All of those things, our stance on it creates who we are and what we represent. One of the most powerfulest things that we can ever represent is an idea, because an idea doesn't die. Biggest proof of this is we have many people generations down the line fighting the wars of our forefathers. A lot of beliefs that are held in the Middle East, that are held even in the US, that are held in various countries, are set in place from people of a previous generation. And those belief systems, when set there so rigidly that to even question them is to put your freedom in jeopardy or to even put your life at risk, then it can cause a lot of friction in this world. And some of that we're seeing today. We're seeing it in situations with the ISIS, the terrorism that's happening with that. We're seeing a lot of it, back a few years ago with the situation in Egypt with the revolution there, and that's what happens when beliefs can't change.
So, belief structure is something that all individuals on the planet are guided by what they believe in, and we hold our ideas about what we believe in without questioning them. And it sounds like to me what you're saying is that we should especially if there's any type of conflict, that we need to take a look at what we believe and see what the experience is for ourselves versus going off of something that happened some other time ago.
Right. Often at a young age, we're told to be seen and not to be heard. And it's that type of thinking is what causes a lot of turmoil in people's lives. Growing up in a household, if you have parents who are stifling your voice or even saying, this is what you believe, don't question it, this is the way to go. If you are to believe that is the truth that you must abide by, a lot of us will walk the face of the earth unconscious for most of our lives because we're not even believing what we're believing. We're believing what someone else has told us. And it's really difficult to find your own beliefs because as a human being, we take the experiences of all of the people we interact and we kind of form this collage of who we're supposed to be.
And society directs that. And I think, kind of playing off beyond normal boundaries, what we're doing today is wanting to go outside the basis of what one belief structure is. If anything, just to question it to see if it has the validity that we think that it does.
Yes, yes. Always question our beliefs. Always. That's one of the most powerfulest statements. I mean, would you agree with that, Scott? I think
Absolutely.
yes. To
Absolutely.
always question the prior assumption, and I mean that's how science progresses.
And I would even say that, in questioning and changing my mind about something that I was fixated on and was a belief that I had, that even the new belief that I am now forming off of whatever it is that I'm discovering should be remained open and questioned at a point when things have developed to such a point that that no longer works. In other words, we always outgrow uh, representations of whoever it is that we choose to be in a moment, because we choose to be whatever, and then we grow with that, and then there comes a time to where we grow again, and the very same subject or the ideals that we believed in at that time has to change because we're taking on a new dimensional aspect of who we are.
Yes, I completely resonate with that. That was something I've uh, held close to heart just about a year ago, and it's funny because when we look back at our lives and we see how much we have grown, just even a year in the past, I was a completely different person. But that is proof in itself that what we know today, no matter how powerful it is, I can't imagine my life 20 years from now, 30 years from now, how much wiser I'll become. So I never set the limit of like, how much I know now. The trick is to know that I know what I know, but I also know what I don't know, and there's a possibility that what I know might not even be true because, well, then again, true always redirects itself to where you're at in the moment. It's always contextual to who we are.
Yeah, to every moment can present itself the knowing of something different, which will change everything that you've ever thought about as far as up to that point.
Right, right. And one of my favorite quotes is it's by Lao Tzu, and the quote is, "The Tao is not the Tao when the Tao is taught." And Tao translates into the way or the law. And it took me a while to study this and to understand it, but what it that basically means is all great teachers, whether you talk about Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, any uh, great teacher, when they relay an experience and they're teaching wisdom, they're teaching their experiences applied. We as a human being, we individually listen with our ears to that experience, but it goes through this filter before it hits our brain, and that filter is our own personal experiences.
Right.
So the only way that we can relate to that person is through our own experience, and then what is passed down will ultimately get changed or transformed. So that's why a lot of people say it's hard for a lot of the holy texts to be kept in perfect condition because they get altered, they get a lot of perspectives get spun on them, which isn't a bad thing, of course, because that's just the evolution of a thing. No matter what, people ideas will keep added, and I once read a book by James Redfield, who wrote The Celestine Prophecy,
Yeah,
and he
good
said,
book.
I think in the book, that now is we've had it like the evolution of technology. We've had the evolution of art. All these different evolutions, but this is a time of evolution of thought, and if we think about it throughout history, thought has always been evolving, and it's a beautiful thing because we get closer and closer to our clarity of truth when we evolve our thinking.
Yes, and there's always a new level of thinking to overcome once you've got one level undertaken. And I believe that's where we are with humanity now. So, to get back on evil now and judging what others do, I was trying to remember a story that Neil uses in explaining that how there's a person in one town who's like a mayor or whatever, and then there's someone that's like a carnival uh, player.
Ah, I remember the exact story you're talking about.
Yeah, can you share that?
Yeah, sure. So Neil is the author of Conversations with God, and he's made a big impact on the way humanity has looked at things, and also on challenging our beliefs. And he's done it in a peaceful way, where it's just through one peaceful conversation at a time, and we're having that change as we speak. But his example that he uses in the book was, if you had a mayor who is conducting a parade for the town, and basically, let's say the weather that day started raining. Well, to the mayor, that would be somewhat of a anxious event, or it would be
Or a hindrance
bothersome
on
because
his,
rain is,
yeah.
kind of, as they call it, ruining the parade. And
That's funny.
but however, if you are a farmer in the town, you've had a drought for many, many months, to the farmer, they're like, yes, rain, my
Right.
crops can live. We can have food, but to the mayor, he might say, out of all the months and months of drought, you pick today to rain, like that, why?
You know,
So here are two different people with the same event occurring, but with different perspectives on them.
and so that I think
And yeah,
that's a perfect definition of looking at something when we label people evil, but that there is something else going on there, and that empathizing with other people's realities is what we should be open to in order to start accepting each other for who we are, and coming together in a unified fashion to where we no longer have to kill each other. In other words, my desire and my long sight goal, to use another term that was in Neil's books, is highly evolved beings, and I believe that's what's taking place now. In order to have discussion, or in order to move towards representing ourselves as a mass of people that way, we need to talk about difficult subjects in a peaceful way, and that is to understand each other's perception. But now, with that representation, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. How could somebody that has murdered somebody fall in that perception? I think that's about the most evil thing that I can think of. That, and I'm not prefacing that with any story, so you may have to ad lib a story that would correspond with what you just explained about the farmer and the mayor of that town.
sure. And correct me if I am misunderstanding your statement, but I think what you're saying is, how do we define whether someone did something, like, let's say if someone murdered someone, is that evil or is that good? So for example, a good example of that would be, like, say, you had a chance. We're in the World War II era right now, and maybe so a person's left alone in a room with Hitler, and they saw all of the evil and horrible things that he has done, and he had an opportunity to kill him. And is that, like, if he made the
Right.
choice to kill that person, is killing in itself wrong, because he's a murderer now, or the fact that he stopped this rampage of mass genocide? Um, and that's a very severe example,
But
but
I think it's apropos, though, for what we're talking about, for it being a difficult subject, and to make the statement that no one is evil. Now, to take a look at it from Hitler's point of view, it could be that he came up in a nation where there was a lot of poverty, and there were a lot of people that were out of work, and that he brought jobs to people, and he brought unity to people, and then and then it got threatened, and so his response was to do what has happened. But that's in the history books as far as how we understand World War II to go.
yeah, in response to World War II, there's actually a there's a reason why. I mean, of course, historians have argued, and there's a lot of differentiation of perspectives on why Hitler did the things he did. One of those viewpoints is that during the time after World War One, Germany was left in poverty. Everything was taken away from them because they were perceived as the bad guys, since they were the one that started that war, or part of the people that were responsible for all of the damages and destructions. So they had a hard time recovering to begin with, and then after that, a lot of the banks were being operated by Jewish people, and the banking system hadn't been around for a long time. But what started a lot of problems, and what is actually a problem for today's economy is the same thing, and
Right.
that's because banking systems operate on something called interest, and interest can actually be weapons of mass destruction if you loan out money for interest, and that money gets loaned out on interest.
Right.
And I believe, I don't know the exact number, but I think if you loan out a dollar today in the U.S. economy has like another, I think, 80 or 96 cents tied to it or something like that. So for every dollar in circulation, a lot of imaginary currency is being created
Yeah,
to
fiat
support
currency.
that dollar. So basically, when that dollar falls out, meaning when a company goes bankrupt, all of the imaginary money that's following it carries its weight through too, and it hurts much more than what it should be hurting. So at that time, all of the bankers were lending out tons and tons of money, and as soon as a few businesses failed, or when the economy got a little bit worse in Germany, the country just went into a total depression, and everyone was desperate, and they were looking for someone to lead them the way out. Well, here's Adolf Hitler.
Right.
And
Charismatic.
I mean, if we were in his position and we saw the things that he did, I can't say that, I don't know what would happen. And even for him, like, that might be the reason why he despised. There might have been an event in his life, or he lost a ton of finances because of what had happened, or how he perceived the Jewish people handled the money. I have no idea what all of that is, but I do know that if this is the case, we can see from his perspective on why he had so much hatred.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that are the problems that we have today, and why history continues to repeat itself, is in that the victor creates the story of whatever has happened. And I think there's an idea, again, to play off of Neil's work, is that if we want to really truly find out what a situation is that we should provide to our young people all the information from both sides, or from all sides, as far as what has happened, and allow them to go through their unbiased, and to read and study whatever it is that's out there, and come to their own conclusions, and not force them to be to think in a certain way of how an older generation perceived it, or how the victor created the story of what what supposedly has happened. So a lot of the truth that is out there, or that we think is the truth, needs to be revisited, because there's stories that are behind it that are not accurate.
Right. Critical thinking is a very, very important skill that students definitely need to have. And unfortunately, in today's time, there's a lot of emphasis on rote memorization, and just going through facts. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of hours and strain on the body that people have to endure just to make it past medical school, or to become a lawyer. Yet a lot of that study material that is focused on is this rote memorization. And critical thinking, allowing someone to form their own conclusion, is really powerful, because when we think outside the box, lots and lots of global change and opportunities become available. We never got further to where we're at in life without all of these great people thinking outside the box, like Albert Einstein,
Right.
the Wright brothers, and I think you're right. Having, or Neil's right to when he mentions that in his book, that
Right.
to present both sides of the facts, and to have the person make the decision, or the student make the decision. I think that is very that is a good thing if we can get to that place.
Yeah, well, I feel that we are. I feel that that what we're observing now is taking place. Like I had said, in the last show, that to me, I feel like humanity has already made the decision, and we're just watching the process play out. Um,
I feel that too. I definitely feel that too.
nice, nice. Okay, so um, help me out here.
Well, well, I there's one point of the discussion on evil that I do want to talk about, and that is, I think that example that I used with Hitler is kind of an extreme example,
It
but
is.
you know, the reason why our world is so polarized is because everyone believes that there is a way that things should work, and they believe that their way is the correct way.
Right.
And one of the most beautiful things that I've read from Neos is that when we give up, and I'm paraphrasing here, right? It's kind of
Same, same.
um, it's not directly from the books, but when we give up our need to be right, is when basically our world we can have world peace.
Yeah,
Right?
it's let's see. I had a thought in my mind and it just escaped me. But yes, it's about, to me. It's like in third dimension. I just use that as an example. It's either right or it's wrong. There's no middle ground there. And so for me, the representation of becoming more or becoming multidimensional is to say, hey, look. It's not like saying, hey, look, Tom, you're just someone who lives in Nevada, and you're just someone who studied Neil Donald Walsh's work. You're many other things. I mean, you're a son, you are a graduate of College of Nevada, you've got a degree in psychology, you've been camping out this past weekend, and there's so many other things that you are. You're just not one thing or the other. And discussing things, that's the position that we need to take. We need to open up that there's some gray ground there, and that there's other things that people are, and to just label somebody one thing or another is not doing us justice in the way that we are experiencing life.
Right, and that's a really good point. It also triggered a memory for me is that we are not our past, we are not our thoughts, we are not even what we appear to be. It's just so small of a fraction of what we are.
Right.
And I think even ourselves, even if we look at the totality of who we are, it's so difficult to encapsulate all of that. And
Yeah, that's like
often,
trying to think of space out there never ending.
exactly,
You know.
exactly. And oftentimes we even we ourselves forget who we are. And when in our forgetfulness, we might think, oh, we're such a bad person, or we're this and that, um, and it's not true. It's
No,
not true.
it is not true.
And yeah, to question our thoughts is a huge. I think for people who are reaching the state of a new consciousness, especially when we go from at the adolescent stage to an adult, we start to realize, hey, we're living and we're operating this life in the mind of our childhood self, and all the pains and all the fears and worries that impacted us back then. We're using those things to interact with people and to make our decisions in life. And as soon as we stop listening, or I wouldn't say stop listening, but maybe listen to that inner voice that's in pain,
Well,
and
or
to
or to just be open-minded about that there's something else happening here, and not overlay that experience that you've had about something that you're playing off from what is in your memory from the childhood, and you're reacting to a situation that's come upon you without truly looking at it and considering that there may be something or more some other experience there that's trying to reveal itself.
right, right, and that's the same thing as listening to someone else tell you what to believe. Except
Right.
now we're just listening to our memory to tell us what we believe.
Right.
But in fact, 10 years down the line, we're much wiser now. We're 10 years wiser, yet we're listening to this 10-year old or 15-year-old person tell us what to believe and what to think. And yeah, that's exactly right. Um, the other thing that you brought to mind was that when we witness someone and we see something that's evil about them, or we see something that we don't really accept about them, it's really something that bothers us. And to put an example of that is, maybe okay, for example, maybe I go to dinner with a friend or with my brother, and every time I go to dinner with my brother, I end up paying the bill or something like that, right? And I get mad at him because I'm like, why don't you pay the bill, or why don't you, try to pay the bill, or something like that, right?
Right.
And I start maybe judging him, or I start building this unconscious anger at him. But if I turn that around and look at it, it's I should pay the bill, and it's just that that's actually what is true for me. Anytime I go out and I eat with someone, if I don't pay the bill, I get very upset with myself because I'm like, I don't. I should contribute, or I'm not good, or I'm unworthy. Like, I just feel bad. Like, it might be an ego thing or a pride thing. I don't know what it is. I feel uncomfortable, and
But I mean, I think life is about give and take, and so although I empathize with that position, if someone wants to pay, I would be open. I feel like I should be open in order to accept them to pay for the meal.
I'm on the same boat as you. I completely agree with that. Life is about give and take. And the funny thing is, once I realize that, or once I start to be okay with not paying, what someone else does doesn't bother me anymore. It's so funny. It's so funny. Like, another great teacher that I listen to and read about is Byron Katie, and she says, she has a very powerful statement, is that the wives, daughters, husbands, sons, parents that we have around us are our masters, are our teachers. They'll always teach us the things that we need to learn. And anytime something bothers us, it's because it's something that we haven't dealt with. When we in fact think it's the external, we think it's about them. We think, I'm speaking on my behalf now.
Right.
I use we, but I'm not
Right.
trying.
I'm with you.
I know that's my fault. I'm trying to teach, but what I'm saying is for myself. It's not about them. It's about me. It's about
Well,
me.
I look at if I'm being conscious about it, and I'm often not. But in the reality that I find myself, every other individual is a reflection of myself, and so what is coming into my reality is what I need to learn for myself.
Exactly. That's what I believe as well. Yes.
So that's kind of what came to mind with you saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. You summarized my point perfectly. That's exactly that's exactly it. And and with that being corresponding that to evil, I think that's actually a very that topic relates very closely to evil. And when we are able to accept the evil that's within us, or that we deem that is evil, then we can actually make a change about it.
Right.
And it's so easy to just for me to point my finger and say, "Oh, that person's evil. This person's evil," and not do anything about it. Come from that victim mentality. However, if I see and I'm pointing fingers, they say that when you point one finger out,
You
you
got
have
three
four
more
pointing
pointing
back
back.
at you, right? So if I can work on self and change self, I have the ability to impact what I believe is evil. I have the power to change it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. This is a pretty interesting topic to talk about because, it does go quite deep, but at the same time, you need a lot of examples. I think, like,
Yeah, it would be nice, being as new as we are, not having an audience to play off of and allow people to come on and to share their perspective and to challenge us with their thoughts.
yeah, yeah, because I am going with a few of the experiences I have, but um, I feel like there is something bigger that we can go about speaking about evil. Um, but it's another thing to talk about it is like without evil, how do you know what good is? There's that relativity, there's that
Right.
duality. Um, Evil itself is for us to it's like the lowest bottom of the spectrum of good, and we at least for me, I fall somewhere along the middle, and um, it could be a good thing that evil exists at least in this realm where we are, because then we have something to reference to.
Well,
Uh,
I happen to think that it is good that it exists in this realm. Although I'm very tired of seeing it within my field of experience or feeling it, I'm ready to move on. But
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
is appropriate for the, in the third dimension, you've got opposing things, and that is, dark, light, fat, skinny, all the dichotomies that you can take and use as a reference for our experience, and in moving into another dimensional aspect of ourself, growing outside those parameters, that is to include the other things that are there, and to embrace evil as being a part of myself, and that it has caused me to choose who I wish to be in relationship to that. Otherwise, I wouldn't know.
Mm, yes. And there'll probably come a point where I don't need to know, um and it's, I don't know, I just don't know how that looks like, because it's like going from it's like going from the second dimension, and trying to perceive what a third dimension looks like, and I just know, this life, and not speaking on it on a macro scale, not just this individual life, but life itself is so vast and so wide. I mean, I have no idea what the loops and turns are for our journey. And it's just,
Well, if we knew
I
that, then that would take all the fun out of
yeah, that's true.
it.
But I enjoy, exactly. No, 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 no. That's you actually caught my thought when you said that. It's just that I just want to enjoy this experience, because I don't know what will happen. But I'm creating it. I'm making it up as I go along.
Right. I'm
And
trying to be
and
more conscious about it. You know, I've been drawn to do a lot of research into a variety of subjects, and I've got a feeling for what I think is actually going on in the reality that I find myself in, and that being a responsible one for experiencing my experience, and my mirrors being everybody that is outside of me, that there is a story that I've created, and that waking up to that is what's going to propel me to another aspect of self that's larger than just a third dimensional aspect.
that's a really good point that you just said. And I want to talk about that and make this more practical in terms of how to limit the acts that we perceive to be evil to occur.
Okay.
And the key word that you're using is consciousness. And for consciousness, it's built by patterns. The patterns that we develop throughout our lives, or again, I'm speaking as we, but let's just use me. I like
We'll
that
just
better.
well, let's no. I'd like to say we, because that's more
Okay.
multidimensional. But we'll go with the understanding in representing this subject that you're talking about yourself
Yes,
and
yes.
me.
Yeah, so this is my truth, and anyone is free to have their own. So I'll just use we for this though. But when we go throughout our lives, we have these patterns that we start to develop. Some of these are healthy patterns. Some are really good for us in terms of striving to become our full potential. But some can be very devastating. Such a pattern might be addiction. Any type of addiction would be devastating, because it interferes with the quality of life that we aim and strive to have, and then our mind gets split up. We have this inner struggle and inner war with us. I studied a lot on addiction, and addiction is basically, a person trying to form an intimate relationship with an object or an event, because they cannot get that same relationship with people. um, and when we had death in the family, or a relationship breakup, or loss of self-esteem, social status, all these things can lead us to addictive behaviors. And ever since I got back on my trip from Zion at Utah, I've been I went through a lot of pain there, through the hike. It was 13 miles, I think,
Interesting that
roughly.
Zion. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Zion National Park in Utah.
Interesting term
And
though.
Yeah, and it was so, I just kept myself thinking like, I'll make it through this, and I had these affirmations repeating over my head. The two affirmations were things that I couldn't really believe about myself, and one happened to be I'm a good person,
Nice.
because there are a lot of regrets and things that I do live with that kind of cloud my judgment. And the other one is I work hard, because sometimes I don't think I work hard enough. And I just imagined myself believing in a reality where that actually was true. And I kept repeating those things over and over again in my head. And now when I came back to Las Vegas, I notice I take a little bit more time with certain things. I'm more aware of what's going on. I'm more present with the moment. And that is the way to stop our behavior, or to even change it. That is the way to, interrupt the flow of our unconscious thoughts, which can lead into evil behaviors or evil acts that we deem are evil. So, when you say consciousness or being conscious, if humanity can get more and more people to question what they're doing, look at the behaviors that they're emitting, and just have inquiry of what is true for them and what isn't true, then we can reach that global collective consciousness, that what you're talking about, where evil no longer exists, or gets closer to being eliminated.
Yes, and in order for evil to be eliminated or for it to start exiting, which I think is what is happening now, and that's the reason why we see so much turmoil within the world. It just seems like there's so many things that are going on right now that is a representation of that. And to me, to have a reality that we've created from a mass consciousness perspective, and we want to experience what it was like to be separate from the all of it, and that we've decided, okay, we've played enough in this realm of forgetfulness. Now it's time to move on to a more expanded self. And in order to do that, the truth must be known. And what I mean by that is that the light is shining on all the dark places that have been behind the scenes for eons and eons. And in order for us to move to a higher representational self, we've got to purge those things by shining the light on it, loving it, healing it, and then move forward.
And I want to go back on what we talked about last week now, briefly. I think last week I had mentioned slightly about how our vibrational frequencies dictate the reality that we have. And this is a belief that I've been entertaining for a while, and I still haven't had enough validation in my life to know that it's true. But, somewhere deep inside of my gut and in my soul, I feel like this is the truth. And it's that, depending on how we make our choices individually, we fall into the collective reality that we are going to get. And, that is not something that is aware for me, unless I can elevate to a consciousness where I can see what objective my soul is trying to create. But if I cannot see that, I might fall into that unknowingly. So it's very important that a person, they choose and they vibrate at a frequency of what their goal is, and if that's world peace, if that's evil exiting, it's an individual choice first that is made before it can become a collective choice.
Right.
So, for me, for example, like if I am doing bad things and I am, like, not living my truth, and I'm just, basically not, if I don't believe in what I say or what I preach, and I live the opposite spectrum, then the reality I fall into may be completely different than the reality you're at, Scott. So
right. So and they can all exist at the same time. And
exactly.
That's a very deep subject to get into, because each and every one of us have our own particular reality, and we're each playing a character for everybody else's dimensional thought process of who they believe that they are.
Right, and each of us have vast and vast amount of dimensions if this belief system is true.
Well,
So yeah.
that is my truth. It is something that I don't even doubt. I can see in my mind's eye that that there are an infinite number of dimensions that are out there, and that, when it all boils down to, there is only one, and that one being the supreme creator of whomever it is that follows their particular religious belief or spiritual belief. It goes back to that, and so really that is all that we are, and that's all that everything is, and we're it's to me it's just a spiritual realm playground to play out, to decide who you wish to be in the limitation that you're choosing to experience at that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. I know, I completely agree with that. That's the same thing I believe. In the end, in the I wouldn't even say the end, because
there is no end.
I think it's forever, like in this circle of life, but I guess that's why they call it the circle of life. It it all returns to source, and what that source is, I there's just so many definitions that I let it ride, but
right.
This experience right here, right now, what we're having, it is a beautiful thing, because we get to impact lives and also make the decision that will elevate us to a consciousness where war, famine, and all these things that we deem as terrible, we can change that. We can correct. One thing that I've heard from many people, many writers, I think as well as Neil, is that if there were no diseases, who would be the doctors? If there were no war,
right.
What about politicians? And hopefully soon, we won't have we won't have that need of those people.
Yes, I feel we're outgrowing that, and there's things that we are getting ready to become that will displace some of these type positions that are out there, but it's going to create a whole new perspective and realm to play around in. And it's going to, what I see happening is humanity being freed up from not being a slave to corporations and things of that nature, but actually that we will be in service to each other, and that when a child is brought into this world, that we search to find out what their God-given talent is, and to pursue that, so that their gift of humanity, or their gift of who it is that they are, can be a gift to humanity.
Yeah, that would be the ideal world, and I'm sure as soon as we reach that state, there'll be many more things to grow into as well. As I think our main objective here is, as we fulfill the greatest and grandest idea of what we are, a new one opens up.
Yeah, and that to me, just jumping back to the dimensional aspect, and the reality that we find ourselves in right now is one of lack, and that's not really who we are. If we really remember who we are, that to use Jesus as an example, he said that you will do these things and more, and to me he was talking about miracles, and that within each of us we all have the miracle to create, and that is to manifest whatever it is that we wish to experience, which is what we are doing now. We're just doing it unconsciously. So whenever there's things or choices that we have out there, we're not in competition with each other. There's not a finite amount of resources that are out there, and especially when we come together in unity and understand who it is that we really are, that we're a microcosmic creator being of the larger creator being, and that believing in ourselves is where the power is, and that is what we have forgotten, that the power that we are as creator beings has been stunted, and so now it's time to wake up to that and to choose who it is that you wish to be, and to do it in such a way where it's in harmony with others.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of forgetfulness when we are to be entered here, or to live in this world. And I think, that's the beauty of it is that when we forget, we have the chance to remember. And through our remembrance, we can know what it is to be great. Imagine being great all the time, that feeling is in the biggest aspect of it, if we were immersed in that forever, that feeling no longer has impact. It no longer has it no longer means anything because greatness is all that there is. So that's
Right.
also the gift of forgetfulness that we have.
Right.
Yeah,
If
and
we didn't forget, then all we would know is the grandness of who we are, and we'd have no contrast in order to see what that really means.
yes, yeah, yeah. That's why God played this little game with us, or he played the little game with himself, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, evil, evil is a big topic to talk about.
It is.
There's so many different aspects of it, but individually, when we change it, collectively, we'll see the change. It starts with one person, starts with one conversation, and that becomes two people, and then it goes on and on.
And
But
I feel that that's what is happening. I feel like we're just the conversation that we're having today is just an extension of other conversations that I see that are going on out there, and that we are bringing this ascension into play. But anyway, Tom, I think we're needing to reach toward the end of the show today, and before we did that, I wanted to know if there was anything else that you'd wish to say before we start closing out the show.
well, I think it's a fantastic show that you're having for a lot of viewers to connect their thoughts and ideas to what can be discussed. And if there's anyone out there listening, I would recommend you reaching out to Scott and his team,
Thank you, sir.
just to get your voice and your opinion on the air, and maybe have a conversation. Because in that conversation, we learn something, and you learn something about self,
Absolutely.
and it's just a great way to expand. I think this is as much as it is for us just to banter and talk about these things throughout the week. I've had a lot of experiences where I can reflect back on what we discussed and also go deep into what is true for me, and it's made all the difference, honestly.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Well,
I love what you're doing, and just keep going at it. And I think one day it can mean all the difference in the world. We don't know what the ripples that we put into the pond and the lives that we impact.
and what shore those ripples are gonna end up on.
Exactly,
Well,
exactly.
well, I really do appreciate those words, and it really hits home with me because that is my desire. My desire is to reach out to others that are out there that are choosing something that is to be in service to others, and I want to be able to provide a platform for them to get out there. Now, not having any audience other than my mother and mom, but I see that continuing to work on it, it's going to grow, and the efforts of the team that I have here with Robert, Ulysses, Ardell, Monique Alexander, and the different shows that we have that are based off of Serve Broadcast, and the Need to Talk and the Uncanny. There's a few platforms to choose from to express any type of opinions that people out there may have. So I do appreciate those kind words there.
Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate you for being here today and sharing your feelings on evil. This
Thank
is
you.
Yes, sir. This is Scott Hobgood with Beyond Normal Boundaries, signing off.